Hello everyone. My name is Natalie. I am an Akashic Records reader, spiritual guide, founder of Soulscape Community Facebook group, and host of today's pleasure panel, Mindblowing Monogamy. I firmly believe that by sharing our unique experiences and relating with one another, we begin to co create community within which we can all explore and heal. And that is the exact purpose of today's panel. So, in the usual fashion of these panels, I will start with a couple deep breaths and then sharing a channeled message from the Akashic Records of today's panel. Always deep breaths. All right. This is not new. This is a concept, a notion, an exploration reborn. And you, lady, are one of the many special and unique souls chosen to explore it, to create this expansion and invite others into this experience of unitary pleasure. But do not be discouraged, do not feel limited. Unitary does not mean closed off or alone or anything of that sort. In fact, in this way that we discuss it with you today, it is quite the opposite. It is the oneness that is everything, the unity of all, and the power of that unity brought into one acute connection. We share with you the image of a finger nearing the object of desire and witnessing the arc of electricity created at that point of contact. It is instantaneous and concentrated on that one connection point. But that one point is all, is everything. It's the universal, the universe brought into each finite moment. It is absolute. And so please, please, please do not feel like you are limiting yourself by choosing this path. And know also, this is not the only path for you to take. It is important that you choose actively this path. Do not be complacent, because that active choice, that active engagement is what generates expansion. And complacency is what formulates restriction, confinement, and an existence in a contractive state. And now that contraction, it is important. We all need that contraction. But the pendulum, our dears, the pendulum is meant to swing, and so are you. So does your desire palpate your soul and push, push, push in the direction of experience, of growth, of more. That oneness is more when actively chosen. Do not be discouraged if up until now this journey has felt unfulfilling. Yes, it is possible this is not the journey for you, but our child, it is also possible this journey, this choice holds everything you have ever desired in this lifetime and the last. Be open to possibility, be open to being free, be open to that curiosity that we know is deep within you, and let it come forth. Let it scream. Lean into unity, lean into being free, and let your pendulum swing, swing, swing. Lady, if you would like to give a little, I know you don't love huge long introductions, but a little just introduction to who you are, and feel free to share anything that came up from that channeling as well. And then we can just dive right in.
Ah, you had me at pendulum. I was like, yeah, the pendulum just brought up for me spectrum and, everything in between, not just the 2 points. So, yeah, that was what landed. And I think it goes right with what we're going to be discussing today. Hmm, you know, I am an infinite erotic being. I am a happy pussy advocate. Among so many of my amazing colleagues, some of whom are here today, Gabrielle, and even you, Natalie. I'm on a mission, leading a movement of playful self-expression and erotic liberation and juiciness. I love high standards and reaching for our fucking dreams, whether we've seen it, whether we think they're realistic. I don't care. We get to have what we want in a delicious way, whether it's in business, in a relationship, whatever. You get to have what you want. And that's really the essence and the magic of what I want to share here today. Yeah.
I love all of that. And I am so glad that we are, I don't want to say finally, but are connecting like a year and a bit after we initially met. Because I think I shared like in the group and everything, like we met at that was it path to passions. I always forget which word is
That's a fashion.
plural. Yeah. And you were leading my group, and it was just so beautiful to get to like mingle and explore and reflect on all the juicy discussions that came up in that space. And I'm super excited to have more with you today. Um, I love it was always so interesting channeling the introductions to these because, like, as you know, like last month we did the polyamory and ethical non-monogamy. And then I was like, but wait, there's more. Like, I don't want to say just because, but for lack of better words, like just because you're in a monogamous relationship does not mean that access to pleasure and all the wonderful things is restricted or should be restricted. And I think often, and like for me at least, talking polyamory is about like freedom and expansion, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen in other situations. And I love that that is what you are all about, and that is what really came through for me in this is like when you actively choose whatever you are doing and it is intentional, like you just said, you get to create the world that you want and have everything.
And let it be uniquely your fucking version of it. Like, I'm not here to bring anyone into anything that doesn't feel super delicious to them. So I'm like, what do you really want in your soul? Not what you've seen, what you've been conditioned, like really. And that takes some time to figure out. And let's fucking fire those flames, and cultivate something juicy. And I don't know if you've heard of the multi-fruit tree. So it's interesting what you can create when you explore the question, what else is possible. So this guy, there's a TED talk about it. He created a tree with 40 different types of fruit, one tree. And you see it is so color. There's such a range of fruits. He would like graft the branches together, and he created something that you would never think to be possible. You would think one tree, one fruit, or monogamous relationship is like this. And anything is possible. And it's such a beautiful, colorful tree. And here are so many possibilities that you can taste and explore within a container of oneness. Um, Anyways, that came up right now. The multi-fruit
I love
tree.
that. And I think that's such a good, I guess that's a metaphor. Would you be open to sharing? Because like I've heard you talk a bit about your journey and like what monogamy used to look like for you and what it is now. Would you be open to sharing a bit about that path for you?
Yeah. I'll give you. So I was a serial cheater. That was what just evolved within me. So I would go into monogamous relationships because it's all I would know. I think my first relationship was I was 13 years old, and that lasted 7 years. Um, so I went in monogamous, and what would happen is after a year and a half to 2 years, I would start to just get really curious and rebellious and just wanting to explore more. So I didn't have a vocabulary to talk about what I wanted. So I would just go and get it somewhere else. So, I cheated on that first lover. And then my second lover became my husband, and he was the one, like everything I thought I wanted. Like, okay, now I'm going to be monogamous. I'm going to do it. Same thing, a year and a half to 2 years in, I just start rebelling. Like something within me just feels like, no, I want more. I'm not satisfied. And it was conflicting because it was the first time I truly loved someone and cheated on them, which sometimes feels conflicting or opposites. Like I was so in love, he was so it, but there were parts of me that he did not fulfill. Um, and then I went on and did it again. I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought I could make this work. And finally, on my second marriage, we were together maybe like 7 years also, and maybe around 4 years, I cheated. So I lasted a little longer than last time. I did good, but I couldn't, it was like a hungry monster inside of me that just comes out like a Hulk, and it needs to be fed. um and then I really hurt my husband with that because we had agreed that I wasn't going to do that. And so I said, you know what, there's probably something wrong with me. I cannot do this monogamy thing. Why don't we just open up the relationship? Like, I don't want to lie, I don't want to get caught. It's just causing too much pain. um and I know now that he didn't really want that. He accepted that as a way not to lose me. That's my version of the story. Probably he has a different one, but and we went into that space, and it was the type of deal of like, don't ask, don't tell. So I wasn't into so much seeing my lover with someone else. That never really attracted me. I wanted to go out and like be vicious out there. Um, and what I found is that I was still unhappy and I still had a void. And I'm like, what the fuck? I can do everything I want. I'm with a person that I love, even though he wasn't the one. Like, why? What's going on? And then I finally decided that relationship was crumbling. That really killed us. I think our relationship died the minute we opened up our relationship. Really. Um, and I just decided, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just gonna move to Australia and I'm gonna have lovers. Like, I don't want to do this. Even trying to open up a relationship or anything, I don't want to be in any container. I'm done. And maybe a month after I made that decision and thought of divorce, I meet the one who is my husband now. And of course, I immediately started sleeping with him while being with my lover. And I said, "Hey, do you want to be in an open relationship?" And he said no. And it was a very, like, I knew he meant business, and I was used to seducing my way, like I did with my second husband, into like, "Hey, this is be fun and interesting." And he said no. And he said, why don't you let me show you what I have to offer? And if you still feel that void, if you don't feel satisfied, you can just leave or you do whatever. And I accepted, thinking in the back of my head, this guy doesn't know. Like, hello, obviously we're gonna want to cheat. Like and that was happening at the same time that I was exploring interviewing couples, starting my coaching, and also coaching poly couples, monogamous couples. And what I realized in that journey that was starting to like come together was that people in poly relationships had similar challenges than people in monogamous relationships, and that jealousy, dissatisfaction, lack of variety, boredom, disconnection, bad communication skills, all those things that we sometimes attribute to a monogamous relationship still was happening in polyamorous relationships. So I just had like a moment of like, okay, so one doesn't automatically solve the other, becoming poly doesn't mean that those problems go away. There has to be a better way. And I was learning, a little bit of the erotic blueprints, and my relationship with my lover was just constantly evolving, which was weird to me. And then I just started to become really intentional. Like, I can make this work, and just taking tools, things even that I learned, Jaya is my mentor, and she's also in a polyamorous relationship. So I just went and took the best of what I saw in polyamory, the best of what I had in my open relationship, and then I brought that all to my monogamous relationship, and what happened was something that I had never seen before. I was more satisfied and happier than I had ever been with all the lovers that had been combined within this one relationship. So, at least for me, one, my soul was finally happy because it wanted monogamy. It just hadn't found it. And it didn't want to settle for a version of it that wasn't juicy for me. But it was like I landed home because I wanted to be in a container exploring infinity. And I don't know, Natalie, if you've heard of the Mandelbrot set. It's like a mathematical geographic image that when you zoom into it, it's infinite. It never stops. So within this one, you guys can look it up, and women and all of you. And that's what my relationship feels like. So it's infinity in a container, and I couldn't be happier. And I want to scream to everyone, be like, "Hey, if you want this, you can have it. But if not, that's cool too." Whew, that was long.
That's perfect. I just as a side note, I always say weird shit on these recordings. I love listening to you say the word juicy. Like, I feel like I could just like listen to that on repeat all day and just be like, okay.
I say it every other sentence. I think juicy and delicious are like my top two words.
I mean, I'm not gonna say it's the reason I wanted you to come on this recording, but like it's definitely up there. I don't know. I think that in like infinite within a container, like also to me related so perfectly to what was like channeled. Is so powerful. And I think it's like for me at least it speaks to really that like you said, like we get to have what we want. And that's like a new thing for me. And it's like that practice of like I think it's like what I've been thinking about it as is self-reconciliation for the purpose of self-liberation. Um, right? And like bringing together all my parts and like doing, like you said, like doing that healing. Like if you become polyamorous, your problems aren't going to go away. And like similarly, if you go, like if you're having like jealousy issues and attachment issues and blah, 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 in a poly situation, monogamy is not going to fix that without doing work. Like there has to, not like work, but like, intention into healing
Intention,
and growing. And yeah.
effort.
And then that infinite can come into any connection or any
We're
moment.
infinite beings.
Yeah. Are there more um like practical steps that you've taken to kind of work through some of those things? Or for you, like it makes sense for me, but like for you, is it more of kind of like an organic, like noticing and like gradually piecing together where you have these opportunities?
Like, what are some small steps you can do towards creating like mind-blowing monogamy, or is that what you mean? Or
Yeah.
yeah. For me, the first step to creating anything mind-blowing is radical self-responsibility.
Mm.
And so it starts within, and I always say this: when I was dealing with like an eating disorder or depression or attachment issue, I was showing up as a version of me which was not the best version of me. Not that you have to become perfect, we're all perfectly flawed, but there's so many things that color our relationship, our little tantrums, not like getting upset and not talking, not communicating, that colors or flavors. You're an ingredient and you bring your flavor to the relationship. So I think first checking in, what is the flavor, or do you like the word frequency, that I am bringing? Because that gets mixed up with somebody else's. And so, you always have a responsibility there. So I would say taking a journey within, a juicy journey within. I say create mind blowing relationship with yourself first, or at least become intentional with that. And that looks very different for different people, whether you work with a coach, a therapist, somebody, time alone, or shave your head. I don't know, go do something and learn about yourself. And because the more information you have about yourself, the more you can even help someone know how to how to facilitate beautiful experiences for you, the more that you're able to do that for someone else. So I could say a million things, but without that foundation of radical self responsibility, and I'm talking about all of it, not that it's your fault,
Mm.
but it's like, okay, this happened to me, and now what am I going to do with this? So you can bring a juicier ingredient into the recipe of your relationship and the flavor of it.
Can I ask what your blueprints are? Is? Because I know they're like blueprints, right? But, like,
um,
I'm curious if you're open to sharing.
So I say I'm a shapeshifter, but it's a real shapeshifter where I'm literally always flowing through blueprints. So in this moment, I'm really high on the sexual kinky
Okay.
because of all the parenting, like fuck me now, like let's get hardcore because I don't want to be responsible all day long. So I'm a shapeshifter, always flowing, and it's big sexual kinky right now. So pardon my language if you're an energetic or anything.
Well, no, I found your like, because you keep talking about, like, foods and flavors, like, to me, that's feeling, like, really sensual, but, like,
But it's always like,
yeah.
it's like the love language. It's like if you ask me to pick, I'm like, I would be unhappy with
I
just
want it
one. Like,
all, yeah.
how do people choose? How do you do that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm just not just, but, like, kinky's definitely at the top. And I think it's only getting more intense as I grow on my personal journey, because that's been a big thing for me was when, I met a friend like a year ago and I was like, I want to try all these things. And like they were open to exploring together, but they also were so encouraging of like, you can explore that by yourself. Like you could make time. And I was like, oh, like there's so much I can do on my own and create that space for play. And
Yeah.
like what you're talking about with that, doing the things on your own first. And for me, that was a big part of it. And like I needed to learn how to communicate with myself before I could communicate with another person. Still don't really fully know if I can, but I'm getting there. Yeah.
So well bragged.
Yeah. We're working on
Y-
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's the infinity. is self-cultivated first, and then you can bring ingredients. So every time I self-pleasure, I bring a new idea into the erotic space that I co-create with my lover. So I'm constantly bringing new ingredients in order to, explore that with myself, and then with him, and yeah, yeah. I'm gonna say
Beautiful.
a lot, but I'm gonna like,
Oh, you're welcome to say as much as you want. This is the space for that.
yeah,
When you say, because I guess this is more of like a personal curiosity. When you say self pleasure, like obviously there's the masturbation part, I would assume, but that's what most people interpret when you say self pleasure. For you though, when you talk self pleasure, like how do
yeah.
you describe that for yourself?
Yeah. The blueprints is a beautiful way to
Mhm.
talk about this, So self-pleasure to me can be the little altar that I have here with the candle and the like crystals. And this feels pleasurable to me on an energetic level. I may also just put on some porn and self-pleasure and actually touch myself. Surrendering to rest and doing nothing feels like self-pleasure to me, like literally just sitting and doing nothing. So take what I say as what brings you into a place of relaxation.
Mhm.
Because at least for me, when I can relax, then my vessel opens up to sensations and to be able to receive play and all of that. Play feels like self-pleasure to me, just being playful with the way I kiss my lover. Like me being intention, not telling him anything, just be like, I'm gonna give him this new kiss today. Like I'm in my own world here. So yeah, whether it's in a kinky way with a psychological game of like, ooh, the baby doesn't let me fuck. Ooh, oh wow, that the anticipation of that. So I'm very intentional with thought work.
Mhm.
So I'm always, whether mentally self-pleasuring or physically self-pleasuring or energetically self-pleasuring. So yeah, like a good old shapeshifter.
Mhm. I love it. And I think like you're saying, like too, when we open up that definition, we gain access to so much more. And like I will fully admit I'm really good at like intellectualizing that, but actually making time to do it for myself is another story. So
Yeah.
gradually
Yeah.
working on it.
That's beautiful that you can even see that, gradual is nice. I don't know, in a container that I am, the Glow Up Mastermind, they're talking a lot about snail pace
Mm,
and just honoring the slowest parts of you. And that is so juicy. Even self-forgiveness is self-pleasure. Like just really like just saying, I'm tired and lazy and I'm not gonna judge that. That's juicy
mhm.
as fuck.
Mm. I think that word shift too, like semantics are a lot more important than we often give them credit for. And re-articulating it that way for ourselves, right? Like a big thing I've been thinking about is like giving grace and allowing that. Like I'm in a new job, I'm doing all these new things, I'm in a lot of pain, and like just
Yeah.
giving myself grace to just be and honor what my body needs and like trust myself. And the more I can be in that, like the more joy I get and the more fulfilled I feel. And then, it kind of just keeps going from there.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
redefining self-pleasure. That self-pleasure doesn't have to look one way. I hear a lot of coaches like, I have to do my self-pleasure, like check.
The box.
And
Yeah.
and you're forcing yourself into something that may not be organic. I love flow, man.
Mhm.
Like just like
Mhm.
whatever appears. Sometimes it's hard what appears.
I literally like to just roll around on the floor. So,
I love your gauges, by the way. I had to say it. I've been
oh, thank you. These are my little robots. They're mama robots.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Thank you. Uh, So this is something I've been reflecting on, and someone asked this in the group. So I was really curious to get your feedback on this. So I've been thinking about like being poly without wanting to cohabitate. I don't want to cohabitate. People have different desires that way. Would you have any feedback on like monogamy without cohabitation? Because I feel like there's a lot of it can be a lot of pressure on like being in proximity to one another. And like I've only been in like long distance relationships for the last few years. So, like I've never had love in proximity that I can really like remember. So like how do you maintain that spark and that juiciness across space without requiring that that space be bridged in future, if that makes sense.
This is so broad, the question,
Yeah.
because the first thing I would be curious is what's the reason why you're not like living, and there could be so many. It's a circumstantial job. I've never personally been in a monogamous long distance relationship that lasted. So I don't have experience with succeeding in monogamy and not being near each other, because at least for me, I need proximity. Quality physical time is something that feeds me. So I'll be interested and curious. What is it about spending time? What is it about those boundaries? Is it something that they feel that they can't control, or is it that they're reacting to one person's situation? So I would hate to answer this question because it's not specific enough. But at least for me, I don't have experience with succeeding with distance. I need a person. Um, yeah. What are your thoughts, Natalie? I'm curious if you have any on that.
Well, it's something I've been unpacking for myself because I've been in long distance relationships. And so that was definitely like a, what is the deal with me not meeting people locally? But truthfully, like it's a pandemic and I'm immunocompromised, so I don't leave my house. So that's kind of the reason that that has happened more recently is like I only meet people online. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So there's
Right.
a
Like,
circumstance there.
yeah. Just for context, I was in a long distance in that it was across the border, but it was only an hour and a half away from each other. Relationship, monogamous relationship for 4.5 years. We were engaged at the beginning of the pandemic, like within the first 6 months. Our engagement ended, canceled the wedding, etc. Um, and that was kind of the next step in my own processing around like thinking I wanted all these things along the heteronormative script of relationship milestones and then realizing like I actually really don't. So like the first one for me was no kids. The next one for me was no marriage. But then I was really hung up on this thing about thinking maybe I'm not built to have long-term meaningful connection.
That's
But
what
what
I
I
thought.
yeah, but what I
Exactly that.
realized was that I don't want to live with someone. And the only representation I had seen, not that I don't want to live close to someone, like literally being next door, fine. I need my own house. Like that's just how I am. But I've only seen people do long term commitment, whether it's poly or monogamous commitment, it's still commitment and dedication, right? With living together. And also in the poly world, there's this weird thing about like, oh, you're people living in one house. Like, that literally sounds like hell to me. Like, I don't want that. And so I needed to reframe it. And like, so for me, it was kind of like the inverse, where like the thing limiting me from accessing the connection I wanted was thinking I had to do it with living with someone. And so finally I realized I actually really don't. Um, so that's why I found it really interesting when someone asked about it. And I think one of the situations that got brought up was, and actually I have a friend going through this right now, was like one of them has a pet or something, and the pet's not going away. Like my friend rides horses, and their partner is like severely allergic. So it's really hard for them to spend like overnights together, even because of the allergies. But they love each other. They want to
Yeah.
be together, just they have their own spaces. So, like, how to keep connection through that.
I just want to just one little point that ironically, um, in a short-term relationship that I had, that he was in France and I was in Australia, you can feel more heat sometimes in anticipation of wanting to connect than with the person that's right next to you. Um, but I just have a curious question to you, Natalie. What is it about the thought of living with someone that makes you feel like I don't want that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Oh God, I always get coached on these recordings. So
Oh no, not coach. I'm just curious. You can say no. You can be like, no, bitch, I don't want to talk about it.
no, it just I love solitude. Like I relish in solitude. And I realized over the years how much I need it. Um, and like enjoy it. And it's interesting, like being so not that I'm that prevalent in online spaces, but like the people in my circle are used to seeing me online, right? When I drop off, I've had a lot of people be like, "Are you okay? You stopped posting, blah blah blah." But I'm quite the opposite. Like there's a lot of time where like the thing that feels best for me is to shut down all stimulation. Um, and that I think also comes with truthfully having someone in I always call it my space. I can't even get to saying our space. Like it's,
Yeah, there's a little bit.
yeah, but it's to me at least the like benefits of potentially having someone cohabitate with me do not outweigh the joy of the solitude that I have being on my own. So it's not to say that I wouldn't want a partner who comes over like 1 to 2 nights a week and we get to spend time together and blah blah blah. Like it's not like no one can ever come over here ever. Um I just like my baseline to be solitude. Whereas I think other people can deal with their baseline being the cohabitation and then getting moments of solitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that fully answered the question, but that's just
No,
where
it does. I want to ask you 20 questions, but I'm gonna be like, okay. No, no, no. It's always every question has 30 layers to it. I just want to
especially for me.
preface that to really get to the essence, because sometimes what's at the top, what comes out of our mouth, what we like its front, it's supported by core values, and so I'm always just curious of what's underneath to see what's there. So it's just
Honestly,
interesting.
if
Yeah.
you want to do another recording on why Natalie doesn't want to cohabitate, I'd be totally down. Yeah, okay, people want this. So, are you into it? I'm into it.
I feel like we could do a little piece. For example, when you talk about solitude, what's the feeling you get in solitude? I would ask.
Hmm. It is like a full body exhale. Um, just like peacefulness. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when I hear you say I don't want to cohabitate, what I'm really hearing is I don't want to be in a space where I don't feel peace.
Mhm.
And this is not to convince you of anything. You get to have what you want, but the feeling of peace can be experienced in different ways, not just in solitude. I'm done.
We did one question. No, I mean it's so true. I have found, at least, it's a lot more work for me to experience it around people and
Yeah.
not in and like for short periods of time. I get excitement, but I don't get like energy replenishing from being around people. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the other thing I will say, because I think this could be important for other people who might tune in, I have recently realized some things about being neurodivergent. And a big part of that for me is the physical manifestation of being ADHD and ADHD ASD. And so my space can get hella messy in terms of what other people see it as. For me, it doesn't bother me at all. Um, and so there's two, like there is definitely that part of it, but then the other side, fully will mention, like, is that it's already so much work to give myself forgiveness for how my space can get sometimes and to give myself that grace. And like, I honestly, at this point, do not have the resources to try to do that with another person living in it. Like I just don't. And but then when I think like if that all went away and blah blah blah, would I want a person here? I don't think so. Like I don't think so. Like I think there's both things. I'd like to get to the point where I am not so hard on myself about that other stuff and like, can be more like self-forgiving with having people over. And like I like my little cave. Like I love my little cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
different.
relate to a lot of what you say. I feel that there's more common ground here than not.
Yeah.
I like to be in peace.
Yeah.
I don't, and I think there's an art of living together.
Mm,
It's not just something that you are good at sometimes, and we assume that we don't. There's an art of the navigation of the day to day, because I don't know. I work a lot with accumulation, right? I try not to look at, okay, the problem is big. I'm like, what little thing that you thought was insignificant and did not speak about build
mhm.
into something that feels like I don't have peace. I cannot be myself. The house doesn't feel like a sacred space. So to me, this is something little that I do. For example, when my lover gets a phone call before, I don't know why I have the habit of saying, who was that? And it's something so little. But if you multiply that by 40 years together, every time you get a phone call, somebody asking you, so there's these patterns that we fall into, that we almost invade a person's space with repetitive behavior. So that's one of the things that I feel that I've learned to, I brag, master in my relationship, the navigation of sacred space, because I like to be, the home is a place where you want to do the things that maybe not everyone sees. You can be imperfect, flawed, whatever. But if you have a critic in the house, or someone that you have to like explain or whatever at all times,
Yeah.
then of course that's gonna interfere with peace. So I'm all for peace. And just exploring, is it possible that I can have this level of peace with another human? And I don't know. Yeah, no polarity, no right or wrong, just
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Hmm. Like, I think I'm starting to like notice where I do it and be like, okay, do you really need to know? Like, what's the reason? On the flip
Yeah,
side, I want to invite people in because of the way that I like to communicate, who feel comfortable sharing with me. It's like I want the security, and I want someone who feels secure in sharing with me,
yeah,
and making that a normal part of our interactions. If that makes sense.
yeah, totally. I feel when you feel secure, maybe that's one of the things. When you feel secure, it doesn't matter who called or when you're in the secured space. Then it's a matter of like, is this like an attractive little pattern? Because my mom does that to me when I go to the house. She's like, "Where are you going?" Every time. Like, do I have to tell you every time where I'm going? There's nothing wrong with telling you where I'm going. It's just, it's not juicy for me to answer that question every time. So yeah, I feel like there's all these little things that we do when we live with someone that could create space, because they're not necessary. They're like this autopilot thing sometimes that we get into. So um yeah.
Mhm. If our friends are open to it, I think you mentioned living in separate residences. Would you be open to sharing a bit of your experience?
So we live in a small town, and maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but I remember one morning Gabrielle was staying here. We're at my place, and she said, "Well, if we ever got married, would you want me to live with you?" And I was like, "No."
And I was like,
Phew. Which meant I got to answer the question honestly, because I didn't give it any thought. I was like instantly no, and she was instantly yes. So I didn't go through the why is she asking? What does it mean? Is she worried about the relationship? It wasn't, there was no insecurity on either side. I don't know what you were just reflecting on yourself to led to asking it. But we both love living in our own places and then getting together.
I think what led to the asking it was sort of what you're talking about, Natalie. Like my space is very much a sanctuary, and everything in my visual field, and I'm a visual and performing artist, and I'm a high energetic and blueprints. And so that stuff really matters to me. And as much as I love Dan and I love his home and it's super comfortable and I love his 3 cats, there's nothing in
Three.
that space that represents and feeds me on the visual level or on the spiritual level, certainly on my like lover's level and on the cat level of connection. But cats ask for food. It's like, I've done that thing. I've taken care of things. Like now I'm taking care of me. And I'm becoming more and more aware of what I need to feel juicy and fed and resourced. And when there are things drawing and asking of me, it's drawing down my energy often rather than supporting it. Um, so that's why I'd like, yeah, that was the main reason. And it was a relief because it's like, because I don't know how I would fit in here. I don't know how I would get fed. I would definitely need my own space and be able to do every single thing I wanted it to be, like from floor to ceiling on all walls, right? And then it would be like sanctuary time. So I think that's what led to it.
That's amazing. I also feel that there has to be different versions of the ideal monogamous relationship. Like I feel like it's a spectrum, and it's about exploring the right little mix for you. I also heard of couples that have separate bedrooms in the same, space. So
Lady, what you're so great at is communication. And I don't know if that's coming from the erotic blueprints and the fact that it gave us a whole bunch of new language. to be able to talk about and explore and understand ourselves and each other and why we do respond to things the way that we do. And so I think that's the critical piece for success in any relationship. And I found that to be the case in our relationship because we've developed these skills. They didn't come naturally or in the beginning of the relationship. It was a skill that was grown into. So if you want to talk more about that, I'd love to hear how you even work with your clients about that. Like when you get clients that have no background in that, what happens?
Yeah, I feel that and this is something that I think we recently learned. It's meeting people where they're at and asking, what is the next easiest step that feels manageable for you to explore this. Um and for me, I also studied interpersonal communication at NYU. So communication has been, and from day one, it was like conflict is an opportunity. This was the first day. And I really took that to heart, that when we feel a little dysregulated or triggered, that the initial response is this is not good. And I know that repair is one of the most beautiful ways to keep a relationship, the ability to repair. It doesn't matter how many times you may disagree. um, so I am very into seeing the opportunity in the conflict, and it's simple, but it's not easy, of taking a step back. And the first question that I ask myself when I feel a charge: what is my part here? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Like, what is it? And it doesn't always come right away. It takes a lot of practice to discover that. Oh shit, this is bothering me. And what I've found with my lover is that it might take a little. He's like, this is really bothering me. Yeah, this is really bothering me. I don't know, but I'm really feeling tense. And 10, 11 questions later, oh shit, I'm actually reacting to the way my brother used to treat me back in the day. And I am having a response to you that has nothing to do with what you just told me, but you activated a memory in me that. So it's just seeing, okay, and it's almost like I always say, like the Matrix. Can we slow the fucking bullets down before they hit you? Because you may have the power to be like, oh shit, this bullet's not mine. And that takes practice and intention, but it's very possible to get to that level. When and it goes to maybe Natalie's point of security, I know my lover's intention and mine is not to hurt each other. So once we can establish that there's no ill intent, then let's explore where our traumas are showing up. Like, then it's like, okay, you don't want to hurt me. Then what's going on here? And it's a beautiful exploration, actually. I don't know if I went on a crazy tangent there, but that's what came up.
It was a perfect tangent. And the first thing I thought when you were saying all that is like, it was actually came up on another one of these recordings illuminate so much of me. It's terrifying. I always say, like, if I share my YouTube with people before I've had a conversation with them, it puts us on very uneven playing fields because, like, they know it all. I don't hold back. But for me, conflict has always been equated with rejection. And because that's what I saw, like, growing up. And that's a pattern I recently became aware of. And so now I'm in kind of the space of figuring out, like you said, like, when is conflict opportunity? And also, when is it time to just let it go? Because
Bingo! There's no one to fix it.
because I think it's like common for women, common for neurodivergent folks, like common for a lot of reasons, to feel like it's my job to make this better. I have to appease you and get you to like me and get this to be okay. And then I turned 30 in August and I literally woke up the next day and was like, I have no fucks left. Like, no, thank you. I'm done. Like, this is the year of just saying no. Like, and so I'm also now doing a lot of that where, like, if people are inconsistent, I'm not going to fight you for consistency. Like, you have shown me what you were capable of by being inconsistent, and I'm tapping out, and like, I'll give people space to learn and grow. But at a certain point, you can do that away from me, and that's fine. we might come back together later, but like, and that's friendships, that's romantic, I ended my relationship with my father, like, for these reasons, because I know that he's incapable of showing up in a healthy way. And I can't fight to bring someone into the space that I'm holding for them, you know? And I knew that for a long time, but now I'm like really done doing it. And I think like that pendulum though, like as I learn these things, I go to the extreme before I can come back to like more of the middle ground. And I also think that's okay. Um, like I'm trying to not be hard on myself or where I may like abruptly end a relationship because of conflict, because you know what, like I trust that if that relationship were worth holding on to, one, it'll come back. And two, I would know that. Like, if I'm willing to let go of it so easily, it's okay for where I'm at right now. Like, that's fine. So that's kind
The
of
opportunity may be to break up. That's the
Yeah.
opportunity that the conflict
end of the
presented.
friendships. Yeah, the opportunity is bye. Like,
Well, I
yeah.
have an opportunity to break up with you. Great. I was waiting for it. Gabrielle, did that answer your question or like
Sorry.
yeah. No. I was just curious.
I mean, yes, it did. Thank you. And I'm thinking the opportunity to break up, Natalie. I was hearing it as even with your father, right? Like, not that you're dating him, but that there's a relationship, and we can choose which relationships are healthy enough to hold together and keep efforting, and those who aren't. And I have a few of those with my own family members. So I feel like I don't have any biological family, really. Much to speak of, actually. And meanwhile, I've created an enormous family of incredible people, which is community and these groups that I'm in, things like that. So I'm all for breaking up with the, relationships that aren't, healthy and working.
Yes, I appreciate that. I feel like every time I've done it, it's like I get, and I don't know if you're into the, reincarnation stuff, but for me, it's like I pull back a piece of myself that I lost a long time ago. And so when I did that with my father, this is a tangent too, but whatever, I think we're here for it. I pulled back part of myself from like a past life where I'd been betrayed and like my truth had been shut down because like he was afraid for me. And now I got to say, like, you don't need to be. Like, I am here in my entirety and I'm good. Like, I am really good. And each time I do that, I have all the tingles, like I get a step closer to exactly what we've been saying through this recording of like being able to create and have everything that I desire and like knowing what that really is. And I get that clarity, which is pretty amazing. Anything coming up for you, lady? I feel like I just went on a big ramble of my life. It's fine.
No, it's great, but I let the feminine flow. Let it be wild. I find that sometimes we're trying to force something to fit.
Mhm.
and I have a lot of conversation around monogamy, and I ask a lot of people like, but why do you stay? And and sometimes we're like, monogamy may not work for you because you're not with the person that really aligns with you, and we're trying to force a change. We're trying to, when I say no compromise, I don't mean no flexibility, but I just mean like you should be your full delicious self and be complemented, with another energy. And it's super taboo, but a lot of times like a breakup it was needed. and yeah, and I find that the struggle sometimes is that we're trying to make something work that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not your piece. And until we can release, as you were talking, then we can create space for that juicy ass piece to come in. But sometimes, we do hold on. And I was guilty of this. I stayed in relationships way longer. And I know one of the questions, I don't know, was like,
Yeah.
when how not to cheat or something like that. And I immediately thought, if you need to figure out how not to cheat, the relationship, something's not right in it. Something at its core, and I like to go into soil, right? Forget the tree. What's the soil? Where did you get the seed? What kind of water are you putting in this, bitch? So if you already have to force yourself to be faithful, I think it's already 10 steps too late. And it's not about monogamy. It's about figuring out at the root what's not vibing and then taking it from there.
100%. So many things. I think that point in particular is so important because I see a lot of people, and I mean, I've probably even thought this at times too, thinking, well, maybe that person's just not monogamous. Maybe this, and like maybe, and like we said at the beginning, those problems will follow you. Because like in any situation here, there needs to be that like, would you say like radical self-responsibility? Is that what you called it? Right. And there
Yeah.
needs to be communication and like mutual respect and honoring that person, whoever you are with, how many you are with. There's the individual connection to be honored and maintained with integrity. And if that's not there to begin with, it doesn't matter if it's one person or five people and you have, whatever. Because also you can still cheat in a poly situation because you can still disrespect someone.
Yeah.
You
I was
know?
blown away when I thought that. I was like, but I was lying in my open relationship. I'm like, why am I lying?
Yeah.
And there was other issues, there was to be honest, I had settled. I'm just gonna be full transparent. I had settled for something that was not what I really wanted. And it could only last so long when and let's call it tolerate, maybe. Whatever's not a fuck yes is a tolerance, and that could be my personal opinion. I own that. But if it's not like a fuck yes, this is my person, to me, eventually, whatever doesn't make it like that is gonna come up. And it may come up in an argument, it may come up if you're wanting to cheat, it may come up with, it's gonna show up. And it's sometimes we tolerate things for too long.
Yeah.
That we don't even know what we're tolerating anymore. Like we don't know the difference between I'm tolerating and what's my fuck yes.
Yeah, I think, and that's the other thing, what you had said previously reminded me of, and this relates to it, I think, is like those relationship milestones, right? And I think a lot of us have like internalized narratives to undo and rewrite from, if it was like for me, like a church upbringing or like the heteronormative script of how this is supposed to look and blah, blah, blah. And granted, you can absolutely have all of those things and it can be fucking amazing. And if you're doing it because you're supposed to, it probably won't feel so great. And like I know I stayed in my last relationship way past when I should have. Objectively should have. I think I stayed exactly till when I needed to, because had it not ended the way it did, I would not have grown in the ways I have over this past years, right? Like I broke wide open. I see now in so many ways how I deserved a lot better than I was getting, and how if I had that fulfillment, I also would have shown up in much better ways for the other person. Because at a certain point, that being unfulfilled kicked in, and for me, it brought up a lot of like trauma that I didn't know that I had. And that's what started coming out towards the other person. And I did not like how I was acting, and I didn't know how to stop it. Right. And now I get to like work through all those things. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. How is everyone feeling? Do our friends here have any other like commentary, questions, anything you'd like to bring up? Yeah.
So I want to throw in that in the conversation about cheating, there's an aspect of secrets that brings power. Like somebody brought up the halt, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Having a secret is a sense of power and control. I think that's why cheating, whether it's literally cheating in a monogamous relationship or cheating in a polyamorous relationship, it's that I've got this secret. And it also ties into what they call in polyamory new relationship energy. And so when monogamy, the threat is this desire to know the other one so completely that intimacy in some ways is the opposite of sexual, or is polar to sexual dynamics and the mystery and the unknown and the danger. So I think in monogamy, the challenge is to balance off that intimacy of living together, of knowing each other, of even when sometimes asking the question, who is that on the phone? Because I want to know more about you. There's the jealousy side, but there's also because I want to know everything. I want us to be one, right? and it's sometimes in contrast to that, like I want the mystery and of the exploration. So I think that that's the balance. I should add to all this that I was in a monogamous relationship for 39 years before I met Gabrielle. So and monogamous in that I cheated twice in those 39 years. So
Wait, twice? I only know about one.
This is why this conversation is so great.
And
I would love, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, like, what I've noticed with you, Leidy, on your social media is like you find all these ways to make your monogamous relationship super juicy, like games,
Yeah.
explorations, and acknowledging, like, yeah, I'm super tired. Yeah, I'm totally worn the fuck out, and all I want to do is have sex with my lover, right? And you're so honest about that, and I think
Yeah.
you're so conditioned to just like not admit any of that and pretend that you can hold everything and be the superhuman that we just totally can't be. So maybe that's part of the secret and why your mind-blowing monogamy thing is so attractive. It's like, oh, there are ways to change the whole narrative and experience. That's so awesome.
Yeah. I love it because you both said something that complements together. And it was similar to when Natalie said that solitude, underneath solitude is really peace. So when I hear mystery or secret, I hear contrast also, to have contrast. And then when you can peel it and you know what do you want underneath, can I create contrast, or is the only way to have contrast is this way? So I'm all for let's know each other, and I'm also all for can I keep cultivating mysteries within me, and then playing with that. So now I have an intention of not just being something like, if we're really talking about infinity and that Mandelbrot set, the more you zoom in, actually, is not that you see the whole picture and it's boring. But if you're really wanting to be present, we're ever changing. And if you're intentional, you're changing even more. So I believe that you can have new relationship energy in a 39-year relationship, but there has to be an intention that you're cultivating that energy between you two. I think it's so easy to go on autopilot. That's why I was talking about the little things we do. Like, how do you kiss your lover? How do you say hello and goodbye? I always observe this in lovers. Is it transactional? Is it autopilot? Or do you sometimes make out when you say hello? Or is making out something you only do right before you're about to have sex? So what are the little patterns that I do that don't allow for contrast to be felt, don't allow for the mystery to be felt? So I totally hear you on that. And I feel that with juicy intention and tools, man, I feel more contrast and mystery now with this one person than I did with all those other lovers. Not to say that my story has to be yours, but I think anything is possible. Oh shit, you want contrast every day of your life? What are you doing about it first? And then are you co-creating that with your lovers and an intentional thing that you're doing? Hey, I want to have new relationship energy. How do you think we can do that?
So delicious. Love it.
Nice.
Thank you.
I love that too. It brought up because earlier when we were talking about my cohabitation aversion, that's what we're calling it now. It's a clinical term. Just coined it. Yeah. So
I lost you there for a second. I didn't hear that last part.
I said my cohabitation aversion. That's what we're calling it now. Yeah. I was thinking too, like, not saying it'll change my feelings about that, but to change how being in proximity feels, like this play and this contrast and these things. Like, I think for me, like, kink is a new exploration for me, but knowing that it's at the top of my blueprints, and how they all kind of fall, it's kink and then energetic, which makes a lot of sense for me. Being able to play in that more can create that fulfillment in a proximity, like proximity of a relationship. And like, even just thinking about like chores around the house and being able to create play around that, where I've previously had like shame around how I maintain my space. Do you know what I mean? And like bringing it into those things, I think could be really powerful. And I also get to know now that like that is a non-negotiable for me. Like I'm really not interested in being with someone who isn't into kink in some way, because not that that has to be everything, but like I need to feel like I can talk about it really openly and like keep exploring and keep engaging, at least on an intellectual level. Um, and so figuring out those ways to create that like spark. And before I didn't have that, but I didn't know it, like we said at the very beginning, I didn't know it about myself. So how was I supposed to create it with another person?
Yeah.
So
Like, do you feel alive within yours? Like, are you fucking on fucking fireworks? Before you ask for fireworks in a relationship, are you on fireworks? Or are you waiting for someone to ignite you? Then that's when it gets tricky. And I think, I don't know, from my cheating experience, I was always waiting for someone to bring out the part of me that I was not bringing out in my relationship. It didn't mean that that part didn't exist. It just means that I was willing to turn it on for one person and not turn it on for another. And there's a lot to be explored around that. You know, I'm too tired to have sex with my husband, but I have energy to go cheat on him with like the masseuse, you know?
100%. Yep. Because I mean, I cheated too. I rationalized it. I did all the things. And I think a big part of it for myself was like, well, one, I mean, I was in active alcoholism, so like there's that, so that's a whole other part of the story. But I think it was also, honestly, for me, it was a lot of like internalized shame about desires, like really healing through the upbringing I had, not to anyone's fault, but just with the teachings of a church and what access to pleasure looked like for a woman and all of those things. I wasn't aware of it because I was like 19, 20 years old, but now I'm aware of it. And I see where as soon as I got to a certain point, I would push away and I'd seek out that other thing. And now I was like, wait, like you're saying, like I get to create that excitement with someone. And like when you mentioned about saying hello and goodbye, I'm like, ooh, I want to like make out to say goodbye. Like that sounds wonderful. Then you get the like anticipation and the space in between, and like, oh my God, it's only like 10:15 in the morning, but I'm like, whoo, so like
What do you all think? I feel like kissing, it's a window to what's happening in people's sex lives. I could be wrong. This is a working theory that I'm on. That you can see a person kiss and it could tell you a lot about what's going on or not. I don't know. Open for discussion.
Well, you saying that makes me also wonder, could the way someone kiss be a window to their sexual relationship with themselves? Right? Because like I've definitely experienced people who kiss in very different ways, and like I mean, I think most of us probably have. And like I know, like my favorite is someone who's like really fluid and like builds anticipation and like I don't want to say like supple, but something more like that. But then I've also been with people where it's like really rigid and feels like they're not quite sure when to action a certain part of the sequence, which relates to things I've observed though in their relationships with themselves about like their security with their sexuality and the different things they play in or like lack thereof in terms of security and that sort of things. I'd be curious like about that too. See, I told you everyone gets to know a whole lot about me on these calls. It's fine.
I love it. Yeah. Do you want to say hi? Zion is over here.
Well, let's see your thing, the Zion song. And I think Sally, what you're just talking about, and Leidy, like, yeah, I never really thought about that, the kissing thing, before you started making a thing of it online. With the challenges and everything. And then I was thinking like, oh no. I was thinking about like, how do we say hello and goodbye? And I was like, oh no, what's that look like? What's it gonna say? And I was like, oh, but so many times it's like super juicy. Like
Yeah.
it's like becoming real close. And like, hello, lover. Like, hello, lover. Like we actually are like experiencing this whole like beautiful, joyful honoring and connecting. Like, yeah, we do live like only a couple blocks away or whatever. And, but we're not seeing each other 24/7. So yeah, it is this like, oh, we're actually in the presence of each other right now. And we're just coming into that. It's really nice.
So, and
Oh, I'm
sometimes,
celebrating that energy between you.
and sometimes it's transactional. It's like, okay, I'm going to drop you off and I'm going to go do errands. See you. Bye.
Yeah.
And other times it's like making out in the car with the door open and her feet out of it already. mine out already, so it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
When the time that I had an affair, and my wife said that I kissed differently after, like,
Ooh.
she's like, "Oh, you're kissing differently," and I was like, "How do I kiss the way I used to kiss?"
Ah!
Kissing
He's
different.
like, I'm not cheating.
I'm in a, I was trying to like compartmentalize stuff, and basically she was super, super energetic, and it just leaked all the way out. And I was not enough confidence to say I'm kissing the way I'm kissing. Like, this is how I, to own that.
But I feel the mere awareness that now changes. If, just that thought going into this discussion, that awareness, because even though I'm playing with my lover, just doing the challenge itself gave us a different energy. Like, intention seems so silly. Like, oh, we're going to do this new thing together. And it brings out a different energy in you. And I feel like it's really capitalizing, not in a forceful, grippy way, but how can we be this freaking playground of endless ways to feel mystery and contrast and infinity, and to be and not be, and to be together but feel separate? And I don't know. I think monogamy is pretty fucking kinky. Oh my God, how kinky it is. I am forced to be with you and only with you. Oh my God.
Thank you for this great discussion. I'm loving it.
Thank you all. It's been so wonderful, because I think, like, for me, even though I'm new on the poly side of things, and realizing like that feels really awesome for me, and like challenging in ways that are super exciting, and like I'm really looking forward to like discovering through it. There are still one thing, just because in poly doesn't mean I date multiple people at once all the time. So like and I'm always going to be nurturing one connection, whether it be with myself or with another person. Right. And so I love, like you said, throughout all of this. And like I always say when people are talking about poly too, it's like all the tools apply in all relationships. Like, it's not that compartmentalized and that like way to seek fulfillment. And I think it's also so important to talk about that expansiveness within monogamy. Because like I said, when I first reached out to it, I was like, I never want someone to feel like they're limited in accessing pleasure and joy and juiciness because of the relationship structure that they choose for themselves. Like, that should never happen. And so it makes me really happy. And I really appreciate you bringing all of your experience, and our friends for joining and bringing your experiences as well to share through that. Like I said at the beginning, right? Like, we get to co-create communities within which we can heal and explore. And that starts with sharing genuine experience and just being open to that. So thank you all so much for doing that today.
Oh my God, thank you also for eliminating the polarity. I feel like there's this thing of like monogamy versus not. Man, call it whatever you want. Are you getting what you need? Are you happy? Because I feel like the term itself creates like a story. And it's about just expansion, deliciousness, and infinity, and contrast, and kink, and all of it. So if the word monogamy doesn't work for you, call it whatever you want and create whatever you want.
Beautiful. I love it. For anyone joining on the replay, I welcome you to check out Soulscape Community to continue the discussion, the exploration between recordings. I love the celebration going on right now. It's really hard for ADHD. I'm like, stimulation. If you haven't already, I invite you to also subscribe to the YouTube so you can get notifications of the next discussions.